Daniel Sloss, thank you very much for your time coming on the Get Jerry On podcast. I guess the whole point of this podcast is trying to come up with stupid ways to get Jerry Seinfeld, funny ways, hopefully, to try and get Jerry Seinfeld on this podcast. I know it is pretty much impossible to get him on, but I got you on, so who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not. I respect your mission, but I'm not confident in your ability. I think it might be a 5 or 6 year journey you're about to embark on, because the tactic you used on me, I very much doubt would work on him.
Mainly because I'll never know where he is, and if I was within 100 meters, there'd be security there.
Yeah. I mean, if you stood outside of Jerry's, I don't think. I mean, is he even on social media?
Well, he has accounts, but is he there tweeting away and sending Insta DMs? I highly doubt it.
Aye, see, that's my thing. Like, I'm only on Instagram. Like, I've got Twitter and I got fucking Facebook, but I think both of those places are the cesspits of the internet. So that's just I give them over to my management, and people are like, "You ignore your fans on Twitter," and I'm like, "Hey, I ignore my fans all the time. It's not exclusively on Twitter."
Well, I'll delete the tweet I sent you yesterday. People can't see it. I've got the blue tick too, so I thought maybe that'll help him see it. It certainly didn't. I didn't know I was tweeting your manager.
Yeah. Well, a blue tick would have worked. I mean, that's always. I don't know why it's so important, but it just gives, you just assume this person can't be a murderer or a creep, despite the fact that Kevin Spacey probably has a blue tick.
I should have put the blue tick on the poster that I was holding up, but it wouldn't have worked anyway. You couldn't see it. Let's bring that up because I guess let's tell the listeners how I actually got you on. It was you DMing me saying, "Can I come on your podcast? Sounds cool."
Yeah, it was. I begged you. I heard about it through the grapevine, and I was like, "Look, I might not be Jerry Seinfeld, but I'm the Scottish version of it. But albeit I say cunt way more." I go out I'm in quarantine. I'm on day 9 of quarantine in Sydney because I'm desperate to fucking perform in this country and be a comedian again for the first time in about a year. And at 2:00 every day, I go and stand on my balcony like the Queen, and I wave to whatever weird fans of mine have taken time out of their day to stand in the park and wave at me. And then I went out at like 4 just for a cigarette, which I shouldn't be smoking, but my logic is everyone smokes in prison, so it's absolutely fine if I smoke during my alleged fucking prison sentence. That being said, I don't know many prisons with room service and, a fucking balcony.
They certainly been given to them.
Yeah.
Do they slide it between the bars? No, they got to go to a common room. I've seen enough movies to know that. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, they got to like sneak them in like the fucking towels or whatever. Like, I mean, I was about to make a reference to one of the only prison movies I know, and it was going to be The Longest Yard, which really gives you an insight into the type of man I am. Which I will say, Longest Yard, Adam Sandler's, great movie, and I'll not hear it said otherwise. If anyone didn't enjoy the movie The Longest Yard, that's because they went into an Adam Sandler movie expecting anything more than an Adam Sandler movie. It's so fun. It's an underdog sporting movie. It's got a bunch of pro wrestlers in it, a young Terry Crews. What's not to enjoy? Anyway, so I go on my balcony at 4, and there's a psychopath across the road holding a white sign and holding a white sign that I can't read and yelling words that I cannot hear because I'm like 16 stories up in this hotel. And then I do what I'd never normally do, which is go into my Instagram DMs, and I was like, all right, which one of these is which one of these creeps is you? And you were like, come on my podcast, and I was like, well, I literally have nothing else to do, so here we are.
That was my thinking. I finished work at midday yesterday, went on Instagram, and I saw you giving shit to your fans that were down there, and I'm like, oh yeah, that looks like he's near Hyde Park. I asked a friend, I'm like, that building, what hotel is that? They're like, oh, I won't say what building it was. And I was like, I got 4 hours to kill. Do I go write a sign, stand in the park, try and beg him to come on the podcast, which is kind of with the theme of what I'm doing with getting Jerry on? I know that's super weird. I said, you know what? If I'm going to get Jerry on, I'm going to have to take risks and do weird, stupid things with even bigger people and people like you,
I
big
like
names.
it,
So I was like, fuck it, I'll do it. Felt like a madman there with the sign. People were looking at me taking not so subtle photos. And they were I could tell they're thinking, people are normally holding up signs to beg for food or money because they're desperate. Now people are doing it for podcasts. This shit's gone too far.
Yeah, I did have, like, when I was in my DMs looking for you, I did have another message from somebody else who had taken a picture of you, said, "Hey mate, can you go in your balcony and tell this cunt to fuck off, please?" And I was like, no, because, like, for me, this sort of, I mean, it's a fun idea. And also, have you ever read the book or heard the story, One Red Paperclip? Like, it was very popular, like, in 2003,
yeah,
4.
and you trade up.
Yeah. So this guy was on this mission to, like, he had a one red paperclip and he was going to trade that for something of higher value. And he was just going to try and trade his way up until he got a free house. And spoiler alert, he successfully did it. So I feel like I'm your first trade. Like, I'm the one after the red paperclip. Like, it's a while before we get to Jerry Seinfeld. But, I'm definitely a stepping stone, but you've got a long ways to go.
Well, you are episode 5, and I can tell you I've gone from a paperclip. I've probably jumped up to a real fancy, expensive frying pan or something.
Great, I'll take it.
So I've jumped quite a few steps coming to you. I will tell you that. Although my last guest was great, Jason Chatfield. Don't know if you've heard of him. New York-based comic, Aussie.
I haven't had the pleasure yet.
Yes, I won't tell him. But yeah, very, very glad to have you on. $75 an hour to park in the city, $25 for some cardboard and some sticky tape. I could tell you that part was worth it to jump a few paper clips. $100.
75 fucking bucks to park in the city.
That's what it cost me $75 to park in the city. I was like, I'll catch a bus. I got to hurry up. I've got to give my brother a lift to the airport. And I'm in a bit of a rush. I'll drive. Finally found a spot. I'm like, $75 fucking dollars. Maybe I should just put this on the sign. It costs $75 to stand here. Get out on this balcony.
Yeah. Please, for the love of God, this is $100 to get your attention, and it was enough. It worked.
Makes me sound even creepier. Anyway, let's talk a bit about your comedy. You're up to your 11th solo show. Are you ever worried you're going to worry about funny things to say?
Yeah. Like, every year, like, especially, like, once you write a show, you preview it, and then you take it on tour, and it gets to the point where you're really proud of it, and you're like, oh man, this is, the best work I've done, and I'll never be able to beat it. And then you tour it for like 9 more months, and you're like, this is the worst show I've ever written. This is shit. I hate it so much. I can't wait to be done with it. And then you sort of bin the show, and then you are just left with nothing. Because I've always been it's certainly a British comedian thing. And to be fair, the Aussies do it as well, because you've got so many good comedy festivals, which is you write a new show every year, right? That's the rule. You do that at the Edinburgh Fringe. Every year you've got to have a new one. You tour it, you bin it, you rewrite, you come up with a new one, etc., etc. And it allows you to have like such a back catalogue of material. Like, one of the things that often happens in comedy, especially when you're starting to get breaks early on, is like you've got 10 or 15 minutes of good material, and then you've got 45 minutes of crap. So the second you do like 3 TV shows where you do your best 5 3 times, you're like, oh God, like if you get any more television after that, you're just bringing out crap fucking jokes. And that was always a fear of mine. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, some of my jokes that I've done on TV are still shite. But I like that. I enjoy being in competition with myself. Like, I often get not necessarily criticised, but my family, my friends, and my fiance always, and my agent especially, they don't like how much I hate my old work, and I hate all of my old work. Like, I don't watch my specials after they're out. I watched Dark and Jigsaw when they came out on Netflix, just because I wanted to see myself on Netflix. That was cool, but I hate watching myself. And they're like, oh, you should be proud of your work. And I go, no, I sort of feel that if I was proud of my work, I wouldn't have that fire under my ass to go, I know I can do better at this. I think the day that I finish a tour and I'm like, you know what, that was it. That was my best work. I'm happy with that. I have to quit immediately, because just that fucking drive is gone.
Yeah, well, everyone's proud of their work when they do it, right? But once you've heard the same joke 100 times, it's hard to see the funniness in it.
Yeah, I mean, exactly that. Like, it's the same thing. Like, if you say a word over and over and over again, like table, 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 eventually the word stops making sense. Same thing happens when you're on tour. When you say the same joke over and over and over again, you forget why it's funny. And there comes a point when you're just sort of, if you tell the joke and you go through the motions of it and you're putting a performance into it and the audience is laughing and you're just like, you guys are fucking idiots. Like, I cannot see how you didn't see that punchline coming. I can't believe that caught you by surprise. But like, that's the, I mean, as long as it's still getting laughs, that gives you the sort of desire to still, give it your fucking welly it, give it your all.
Yeah, well, they can't see it coming because you've got the genius mind, which makes them laugh in the first place. I want to talk about Jigsaw quickly. You talk about how, you made 12,000 people break up, 300 divorces, but what about...
What's more, no, it's 120,000. You've read that wrong.
120,000. Sorry. Yeah. Well, make sure you get it wrong. I've destroyed a lot more lives than that. But what about the flip counter? What about people that have heard the special, liked it, found it funny and everything, but they were like, oh, I've listened to your points and I'm not feeling that about my partner. It's actually made me realize I like them, and they might have gone from the girlfriend or the vice versa to engaged and married, which I guess I heard it and I was like, you know what, none of that seems to apply to me. Maybe this is the one.
Man, that is the flip side of Jigsaw, but that's the statistics I never talk about. I know Jigsaw has led to at least, I think it's 400 engagements, and it's led to like at least 10 babies. Like, wow. Because there are people who are in good relationships who watch it and it sort of reaffirms that, oh, like I am with the right one. But the thing is, I don't boast about those statistics because they're not as funny. They don't make me feel as powerful.
Well, it can attract a different market. Come to this, and if you come along to this, I might propose to you after this.
Well, man, I think Jigsaw is a lot like quarantining with your partner, right? So, if during the lockdowns with your partner, it either makes or breaks a couple. Either you spend 16 weeks in the same place with this person, and by the end of it, you're either like, I fucking hate you. This is awful. We can't spend this much time together. Clearly, we're not for each other. Or it makes a couple. My girlfriend moved in January last year. And I mean, I'd say this joke in the show, but my girlfriend moved in January because I thought I was going to be on tour for 9 months. So it was going to, I was happy to have her move in, but like, hey, babe, love you lots, keep it clean, see you later. And then we obviously went into this lockdown, and it was great. It was genuinely, like, I was so worried that she would work out what a fucking psychopath I am. Like, she'd only ever like truly experienced me in like small sort of doses where she got to visit me in Australia and we got to go to New York together and all the exciting stuff. She'd never seen me in my my normalness, which is just lying on a couch, playing Xbox, reading fucking nerdy ass books and not doing much. But for whatever reasons only known to herself, that's what she really loves about me. So I got to the stage by the end of the fucking year, I was just like, I have to propose to this bitch at this point. Like, there's no further questions. Like, we spent a year in lockdown together, and it was brilliant. So that's that. And yeah, then I proposed, and then a bunch of people who've never watched Jigsaw but only ever saw the headlines were like, oh my God, you're such a fucking hypocrite. And I'm like, no. Like, the point of Jigsaw was I've never once said I didn't believe in love or that I didn't want love. I've wanted to be fucking married since I was about 8 years old. The point of Jigsaw was I think that a lot of people are settling for less than they're fucking worth because they've got this inherent fear of being alone, which is, ingrained in us since we're 10 years old, because every television show and movie is about finding love, and if somebody's got features that you don't like about them, or you just change yourself to be more suitable for this person. And I just think all that's fucking horseshit. I think it's very, very sad to see people that they've never taken the time to sort of spend it with themselves and have a level of respect for themselves that they go, I do deserve somebody that makes me happy. I do deserve like a really good relationship. I deserve a relationship where I don't have to be scared. I don't have to hide things from them. I'm not ashamed. They don't make me feel ashamed about certain aspects of my life. They, for whatever fucking reason, love me for who I am. And despite the fact that I am a miserable bastard, or at least I like to come across that way, I do believe everyone is worthy of that type of relationship. And also, man, there's just such a innate fucking smugness that I saw when I was single, like of like my friends who I knew were in shitty relationships. Like they were with people that they would bitch to me about the entire fucking time, but their Instagram feed was all like, oh, me and this one going for coffee, spent a lovely day at the park hanging. I'm like, you're fucking miserable. Don't lie to me. Don't try and convince me that you're happier with that piece of shit than I am masturbating alone in a hotel room. We both know who wants whose life here. You'd rather be wanking alone, and there's no way you could convince me to date the person that you're with. So it was meant to be like a little, fuck you, cheap shot, get you in the fucking kidneys, because I think these people that brag about their relationships, their shitty relationships especially, one of the negative effects of what they're doing that they don't realize is they are convincing people who are alone. And it's hard to be single sometimes. Like, it's great sometimes, but it's hard. Like, life is complicated. Nothing is black and white. But if you've been single for a while, and you're feeling lonely, you're getting older, you got pressure from your family and friends being like, why don't you settle down? And you see your friend online and you're like, well, Claire's still going out with John, and even though she fucking hates John, she's still with him. So I guess being in a shitty relationship is better than being alone. So I guess I'll just do that. And I think that in itself is toxic.
Yeah, it sounds like even though you've got 120,000 people to split up, 300 divorces, you still haven't got it out of your system. So that's good to see.
Yeah, man, I don't think I'll ever get tired of receiving the fucking messages. Like, my agent gets she gets all the fan mail through my website, and she'll still occasionally send me the occasional bit from people from fucking Hungary or India or fucking Colombia being like, hey, just caught your special and I left my wife or I left my husband. And this is like 4 years after I wrote the show. Hopefully it never ends. Hopefully it just keeps going. And on my deathbed when I'm 85 years old, I'm still just scrolling through the gram laughing at the power I had several years ago.
All right. Now tell me, how often are you writing? You've got a lot of material, so much. Are you even writing it down? Are you working this stuff out on stage, or you just in this hotel room now, for example, in quarantine, just writing away?
No, I'm not writing. So like I wrote a show last year in January, and then I took it over to New York and LA to just sort of do like a 4-week run in the theaters there to sort of like fucking get it into shape, beat it into the point when it was, something I was proud of and ready to tour, and I was ready to bring it to Australia. And then all of this fucking COVID happened. So when there were some gigs that came back in the UK last year, like I managed to get a couple of gigs in between July and August, and then there was some between October and December. And I sort of found out, because they were much smaller gigs, because that's all we were allowed to do, I found out that there were definitely some jokes that do not survive post-COVID because they just don't make sense in a post-COVID world. And it's been really fun to sort of learn that and go, oh, fuck, okay, this joke, I'm going to have to, I know the joke itself is funny, but I've got to now fucking pitch it in a way that still makes sense in this world. And it keeps me creative. I mean, I know I said I hate watching my stand-up, but one of the things I'm going to have to do is, I think next week before I get out of quarantine, I'm going to have to go back and watch that show again to just get the jokes back into my head. But because I'm just so sincerely excited to be back on stage again, and I'm back on like real stages with, no social distancing, fucking full capacity theaters. I'm excited to, work it out on stage, play around a bit more, still do the jokes I want to do, but not be as locked into the material as I sometimes get at a certain point in the tour, because I often feel, there's a point when a joke is, you've worked out the perfect way to tell it. And you're like, if I add anything more to this, it's just going to be sticking fucking extra cherries on a sundae. Like, I've got to do it each way. And because of this delay, none of those jokes are there. And I don't want to get into that fucking rut. I want to, I hate to sound like a fucking meditator at this point, but I want to be present the whole time. Like, instead of just going, okay, this is the next line, this is the next line, this is the next line, play with the audience and be a bit more creative in the way that American comedians naturally are on stage, as opposed to sort of the British method, which is if it ain't broke, don't fucking fix it.
The excitement that comes from comedy. I mean, I guess the first kick is just kind of figuring out that you're funny and people find you funny. The second will kind of be, making a career out of it. Third will be kind of making quite good money out of it, that it kind of sets you up for life. I guess you've really hit all those three levels. What now gives you the most satisfaction from doing comedy?
Certainly the making a career out of it. Like, when I started comedy when I was 16, 17, like I did do it just because I loved it. It was more of a hobby, but I never thought I'd actually get to the point where, I made a living out of it, let alone got to travel the world. It's hard to pick one particular thing. Like when the Netflix specials came out, that was a particularly fucking special moment because there had been like 3 years when we'd just been banging at the doors of Netflix, just going, look, I've got these fucking shows. I know how good they are. I really want them on there. And Netflix were like, not no, but like, obviously we're not going to say no, but just not yet. And over the course of those 3 years, I was writing new shows, and it was just, for me, it felt like I was just building up such a back catalogue of material that I couldn't fucking get rid of. And then, when they came out to see them, like the shows in full, I was just sort of able to just go, there it is. That's the fucking artwork. It's done. And I never have to touch it again. And it takes you to some amazing places. Like I got to perform in Tokyo last year. I got to perform in, not last year, 2 years ago, Moscow. I've done fucking Lithuania. Like I'm surprisingly famous in Estonia. Like things that you just never expect to get to do. It's me and my friend Kai. He's been my support act on tour for years and years and years. And we have a game that we play, and it's called Living the Dream, right? And you've got to play it on both ends of the comedy spectrum. So when you're in like a rooftop pool in fucking LA and you've got a sold out show that night and you're just drinking some cocktails while fucking sunning it up, you turn to each other and you go, living the dream. And you both go, we are living the dream. But on the same side, when it's fucking 3 a.m. and you're driving 7 hours home from a shitty gig in fucking Leeds and you're filling the car up with petrol and you're eating fucking service station sandwiches and you're miserable, you've got to go, living the dream, because that's the other side of it. Like the whole thing is the dream. The whole experience is what being a comedian is. And you have to appreciate the shit with good.
Yeah, or puts it all into perspective. Does it get weirdly lonely though, playing at massive theaters as opposed to like, I guess if you're playing in a comedy club, a bit more intimate, a bit more of a communal scene, you're backstage with the comedians, and when you get to your level, when you're playing these huge theaters, in a strange way, despite there being more people, it could be a bit more of a lonely experience?
Yeah, that's why I'm very lucky that like my friend Kai's it's supported me on tour all these years, so we're very good at traveling together. Like I make enough money now that I can bring my girlfriend out to, well, not now during COVID, but she could join me on bits of the tour when I was getting lonely. And the other part that's really difficult is like I love meeting fans after shows, like because I'm so grateful that people fucking watch my shit and support me and enjoy what I do, that I always feel an obligation. Makes it sound like I don't like to do it, but like I want to say thank you. I want to be sincere and be like, man, you deserve more. But the second, that was easy to do when it was in fucking 300-400 seats. You could stay for 2 hours afterwards. And there were points on the last tour where, because we were flying somewhere after the show, or because we had to drive somewhere, or because I was just exhausted, you'd have like 500-600 people waiting by the fucking stage door. And you just go, I just can't. Like if I were to say thank you to every single one of you, I'd be here for 7 hours. And like, and that makes you feel a bit sort of lonely, because most of my fans are lovely and they fully understand, but you do get the occasional asshole who's like, you've changed, and you're like, yeah, I have. I'm very successful now. Like, I'm sorry. Like I thought that's what you wanted. That's what we were in this together. I can't, I am grateful. I just don't have the time to take 3 minutes to tell every single, because it's 3 minutes for you, but it's 7 hours for me.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think that comedians need the whole Netflix ride now, and all the big platforms that you're on? There's a lot of comedians now really pushing up the levels to self-producing comedy specials through YouTube, and it's almost in a way more accessible for people and on their own social platforms.
So it's something I'm definitely intrigued in because I mean, I've seen the impact of the Netflix specials. I've seen the impact of having an HBO special, but there's also, you've got, when it's on Netflix, it's everywhere. But with other stuff like this, I would love to release one of my specials for free on YouTube, but I can't because I don't own the rights to it anymore because I fucking sold it. And it's a bit frustrating to like have this work and have people, fans being like, hey, when are you going to release this show? And I'm like, it's not up to me. Like, I really wish it was. It should be. It's my work. I'd love to, just put this for free on YouTube. And I've learned lessons in the past 3 years that perhaps I should take a bit more ownership of my work. And it's definitely something that I'm leaning towards and speaking to my agent about.
Yeah. So your next special, say not this one, but the one after that, you still can't even release that yourself on YouTube.
This next one I could. And it's something I'm seriously considering. Like, if Netflix were to come back and be like, "We'll take it," I would give it to them because I mean I've seen the success and how powerful it is. But if they don't, and if there's no other offers, I don't want to wait anymore. Like, I want it to come out on my terms, how I want it, and that would be through my own YouTube channel.
All right. Sounds good to me. Now let's talk about the hook of this podcast, getting Jerry Seinfeld on this thing, which you've said is a 4 to 5 year journey for me. And you're probably a bit hesitant in saying, I don't want to insult him too much, but I took it as a compliment because I think he's never coming on. But we can only try. I guess my first question is, you're probably the second guest I've had on that this could be a realistic option. Have you actually met Jerry Seinfeld yourself?
Yes and no. I was doing a spot at the Gotham Comedy Club in New York.
He's go-to.
Yeah. And so I was just there. I was there to do 5 or 10, and they just went, "Do you mind if we? Do you mind?" I think I was booked to 10. They were like, "Do you mind if you only do 5? Because we've got Jim Gaffigan and Jerry Seinfeld have turned up." And I was like, "Holy fucking shit! Like, absolutely, I'll do none. I'll just stay here and watch. Like, just let me stay in the room." And he was doing this set, which was, he was going through all of his material that he wrote when he was 17, 18, 19, 20. Like, he was going back to his old stuff and just sort of, and that was incredible to watch, just to see, him go back to jokes with an extra 25 years of experience and sort of being able to dissect his own naivety. And it was like watching just a masterclass. But my thing is always, I've got a real fucking like imposter syndrome in stand-up. So I never introduce myself to fucking comedians that I respect. Like, I always want them to meet me like at a comedy club when we're both on the fucking same bill. I want us to meet as fucking equals because, I just don't want to be the guy that goes up to Bill Burr and is like, "Hey, I'm also a comedian." And he's like, "Oh, I'm fucking sure you are." So I didn't have the courage to go up and, but what would I fucking said to Jerry that he's never heard before? "Hey, I'm a comedian. I'm a big fan. I think you're great." So that was as close as I came. Didn't meet him. I don't think he saw my set because he arrived later on, which I'm fine with because I didn't do that great that night. So it would have been very bad had he seen me. And I'd be like, "I'm a comedian." And he would just be like, "I've seen your set." "No, you're not."
You could have just got super competitive with him. "Hey, I heard my Netflix special had more views than yours, but just saying."
Well, if Netflix don't tell you how many views you get unless you're at the Jerry Seinfeld level, where they probably let him know, but they've never told me. We've just had to guess.
Have you asked?
They won't tell you because if you know how popular you are, then you can be a bit more. Yeah. And so you sort of guess it. I mean, that's why my tour ended up so big 2 years ago, because we just kept adding shows on because we just couldn't. We knew they were selling out, but we didn't know to what level. We're like, are there 3,000 people waiting for tickets, or are there 5? Like, do we add an extra show in like 1,000-seater and then sell only 50? So we just kept adding shows and shows and shows on.
Yeah, sounds like your Australia tour at the moment. Tell me, do you have Jerry Seinfeld's number so we can just put an end to this podcast and save the next 6 years?
No.
Just prank call the guy?
Just, "Hey, man, just don't ask. Yeah, don't ask when I got the number. I bet it was that fucking Scottish comedian." "Oh, shit."
So that guy in the corner that kept staring at me once at Gotham and wouldn't introduce himself.
Yeah, the guy, I saw him take my phone and type in my own number into his phone. Was it fucking him? I knew this would come back and haunt me one day.
Well, do you want me to tell you a couple of ideas that other comedians have given me so far to try and both get his attention? So there's two kind of thoughts of ideas. One is trying to get people's attention so that people actually listen to the podcast, and the other one is getting Jerry Seinfeld's attention. I'll give you a couple that we've had from comedians so far. One is a big one is a billboard idea. So I know stupidly doing a billboard in Sydney, Jerry's not going to see it. This is more to just try and get people listening to this thing with just the phrase, "Do you know Jerry Seinfeld?" with a question mark and a QR code leading straight to the podcast. People are like, oh, he's got a podcast, he's got something. So like all good advertisers, just completely fooling them and being full of shit. And hopefully it just sends them straight to the podcast. What do you reckon about the idea of, do you know Jerry Seinfeld on the billboard right out the front of a train station?
I think it worked, but I mean, it's a fucking expensive way to go about it. If you're complaining about $75 for parking in fucking Sydney, I can't imagine how much a billboard's going to cost.
I can tell you exactly. I've called up. It's 1,800 Aussie dollars, so I'm in a bit of trouble. I need to invest in Bitcoin, I think, at this stage.
$18 for how long would that stay up?
1,800 for a month.
That's cheaper than I expected. But again, he doesn't live in Sydney, and
no. But we need people seeing. We need people listening. I can't say, "Hey, come on this podcast." He's like, "Yeah, cool. How many listeners you got? Like 12."
Yeah, you got to get it to the point where it's very popular. I think one of the best ways to get him is he's a car buff. He loves fucking cars. So that's the whole point of comedians and cars, getting coffee. Now, this is a much more expensive route. But if you were to be able to like get your hands on an extremely rare classic car somehow, and then be like, because the way the Nerdist podcast, the way they got Tom Hanks on their podcast was because he's massively into typewriters, and they sent him like a old school typewriter that they knew he didn't fucking have, an extremely rare one, and he was like, holy shit, like this is great, I'll definitely come on your podcast and talk about typewriters. If you could find the right fucking classic car, I mean, it's going to be hard to find a classic car that Jerry Seinfeld doesn't own or have access to. But maybe that's the way.
Can you find a car that he doesn't have access to and can't afford, and you can just slot right in? And this journalist from Sydney can out-finance Jerry Seinfeld. Well, I like your thinking, because obviously I've done some research into this field, and yes, he loves those classic cars, but he also has a big affinity for coffee machines and coffee. So I could do a similar thing, but with a coffee machine. Hopefully this coffee machine is a bit cheaper than, or make a coffee machine like with some kind of Seinfeld reference to send to him, but he probably couldn't care less about that. So maybe a rare kind of old school coffee machine.
Yeah. And also, I mean, you Australians you brag about your coffee all the time. So surely it would be
surely you know why. I mean, you live in Europe. It's pathetic over there.
Well, man, you're talking to the wrong person. I literally only drink coffee for the effect. I couldn't give a shit how it tastes. I drink coffee black and sad like my soul. Just wake me up in the morning.
Me too. I'm a long black man, and it confuses a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, there's a comedian friend of mine called Nick Cody who lives in Melbourne, so he's such a fucking coffee slag. And one of my other friends would just wind him up constantly by just buying 7-Eleven coffee in Melbourne and just be like, I see what you mean. Melbourne coffee's so good. It's just, and Nick's like, no, it's not. It's not what we meant. He's like, delicious. 7 sugars. Yum, yum, yum.
Oh dear, yeah, the old $1 coffee. It probably tastes not too bad. It tastes better than American coffee, I can tell you that much.
I
disagree.
Oh, man, again, I'm not.
Couldn't care less. Couldn't care less. All right, noted. So I've been trying to get in contact with people that were on the actual show Seinfeld, but just in the background, like the nothing characters, just to get what was he like? What can I do to try and tempt him on? And I've messaged about 5 people that are on the show, even the costume designer from Seinfeld, who's got this pretty viral Instagram account. She's the only one that's responded and said absolutely not. All the other characters said absolutely nothing, and they're pretty old, so I don't know if they're actually understanding the use of social media, if they even check it, but that's been going downhill. A market idea, where I don't know if you're familiar with Glebe Market, just like a market stall. And you see people setting up market stalls, and it's like, let me convince you why Christianity's real. Let me convince you, blah, blah, blah. Mine's let me convince you in a minute, why you should subscribe to this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I don't think you can turn down any ideas.
So your idea, you think my best bet is get something rare that he'll like. I don't even know how to send it to him. Figure that. If I can't figure that out, I'm not going to figure out how to get him on the podcast. So that's probably the least of my concerns. But
Yeah,
a rare, your idea's cars. I might bring it back to a coffee machine and tempt him with a
tempt
gift
them
and
in.
a little note in there saying, by the way, I've got a creepy podcast. We're 100 episodes deep, and yeah, get on here.
Yeah, I mean, it also might get to the stage where he just becomes aware of the podcast and he just decides that it's too creepy and there's nothing he can do, and he'll just never come off it. Like that's, I think you have to emotionally prepare yourself for that as well.
Oh, I'm prepared. I've gone through the creep. Do you think standing in a park yesterday didn't prepare me for the creepy levels? That's the creepiest I've ever felt. I even called friends. I called my brother. I called a couple of friends saying, "Is this too much? Is this like this?" I know the
and they
podcast.
and they didn't say no.
One friend said, "You know what? I think I do think about you a little differently at this moment, but I'll try and move past it."
That's a good friend indeed.
Yeah. Okay. So if Jerry does come on, a final question for you: when do you think that will be?
I'm going to say minimum 5 years, bare minimum. I think it's going to be a long. Like you're gonna learn a lot about podcasting in that time. Like it's going to be you're going to be a fucking season, which is good because like then you could be like you'll have done it for you. Like I've got 5 years of experience at this point. I'm a serious podcasting journalist. We can do the hard hitting stuff.
Mm.
We can get into your fucking childhood. It can be like a like Oprah or some shit.
Well, he went on the Mark Maron podcast and pretty much spent the whole time saying how he didn't want to be there. So, what?
Well, there you go. I mean, that already doesn't look good for you.
And with the paperclip theory that you mentioned, I now like to ask every comedian that comes on, I like to follow this theory. So as you mentioned at the start, which was strange, you follow that theory, you get one and you use that to get it higher and higher. It's fair to say I didn't expect to get to your level in episode 5. Do you think that you've got a comedian friend that would agree to come on this ridiculous podcast? Can you help with this paperclip theory?
I'm not friends with any comedians that are more famous than me because my ego couldn't handle that. So I'd only be offering you a step back.
All I needed was for you to say hello at Gotham Comedy Club all those years ago, just to whisper in his ear. I'm a comedian too, mate. Come on, something.
I know. Could have been the shortest podcast series ever. Like if I was just very good friends with him at this point and he trusted me. Episode 6, we got him on. Short-lived. Done.
Well, I appreciate your time very much coming on this ridiculous podcast, and follow it, keep in track. And if Jerry sends the police to my house when I've got an apartment full of coffee machines, then I know who to blame.
Fair enough. Thanks very much for having me on, man. And thanks for taking the time to wave at me in a park. Made my day.
I won't be doing that again. Let me go.
I was gonna.
If you see someone down there for the next 4 or 5 days, however long you're in quarantine, it wasn't me. And you might actually get 10 people down there now holding up signs saying, "Oh, he's agreed to go on a podcast. Maybe you'll do it for me."
I know. I've set a fucking dangerous precedent. This is the only one.
All right. Well, I noticed you deleted the story, so good move with that. Thanks for your time, mate.
Thanks, buddy.